Welcome to Boatwire Secret Weapon. I am your host, Captain Matt, and today we're talking about engines, motors, drives to run away from, walk away from, or be very skeptical of, not to buy in many cases. So let's jump right into the very first one, and that is the Evinrude Fick engine. These were made around 98 to 2000. You can see a couple comments from a few other of my videos of what not to buy. But these were notoriously poor engines. So that's number one on the list. Number two, we've got the OMC Stringer Drive. Now, the Stringer Drive especially, I know they're old. There's not many out there anymore, but they're always a cheap boat. You can get this boat for $1,000, $1,500, and people, especially first-time boaters, think, oh my God, this is a great deal, and they have no idea that that boat is likely worthless. Now, I know there's some OMC lovers out there that say there's no problem if you take care of them, but there's just too many issues with these, too finicky, too touchy, too temperamental, too difficult to find parts in a lot of situations. Now, the OMC Cobra Drive, a little bit different story. It didn't make the list. I'm still not a fan of it. Be cautious with the OMC Stringer Drive, and I'm going to say run from that one. Next is the Yamaha 4-stroke 6-cylinders. So these are the 200s, the 225s especially, and the 250s that were made from around 2003 to about 2006. Now, these had a defect in them where they were corroding in the midsection from the exhaust. The material, the paint, the whatever they were using was not stopping the corrosion, and the corrosion was getting so bad it was eating its way up into the power head. Now, if you're looking at one of these, they're have a repair kit that's about $600, $800, $900, about another $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, depending on where you're at to get it fixed. And it's a very in-depth job. You got to pull the power head, you got to take everything out of the midsection and put it all back. But it's such a serious issue that Yamaha created a specific part number to address this issue on those motors. So if you're gonna buy one of these or you have one of these, what you want to do is drop that lower unit and take a camera or a borescope and look up in that midsection to see if you have excessive corrosion. There's some really good videos online of technicians that are way smarter than this stuff than I am that you can find. I'll try to link to a couple of them down in the description below. Be on the lookout. This is one to slow it down. Don't run from this one necessarily, but do that inspection before you buy it. And if you have one, do that inspection as well. The Chrysler. Now, this is an old one. This in the late 60s and 70s. A friend of ours, Stan Lichtenberg, had this on a red Chrysler boat. He always broke down. We had our little 16-foot Larson tri-hull with the 85 Mercury, which was pretty reliable, even though that engine had its issues. A lot of them did at this time. But I remember Stan and Shirley always broke down on that boat when we were down at the Ozarks. So this one makes the list, just kind of for a throwback. Next is the Mercury Optimax 2-strokes. There was a period from 95 to about 03 where they had some issues. Now, here's my feeling on this one is if it had that issue, the power head's probably already been replaced. It's in the boat graveyard somewhere. So these, I'm going to say, just like the Yamaha, slow it down, ask some questions about how many hours are on it, how well they've been maintaining it, and if that power head has been replaced and that issue has been addressed. Next is the Force outboards. Hey, I know there's a lot of people out there that are going to say, I've had it on my Bayliner for 30 years and it's never let me down. It's never been an issue. Here's the issue with the Forces is one, they can be very temperamental when things aren't perfect. Two is they were on a lot of entry-level boats, Bayliner specifically, and they weren't always maintained properly. They weren't always run properly. And so you've got a temperamental motor with a user base that doesn't exactly know how to handle it, how to do the maintenance properly, or skips maintenance because they're price conscious and they don't want to spend the extra money. Stay away from the Force. That's one I would run from. The SEI replacement drive. So here's my take on this. You'll find some people in the marine industry that swear by them that say, hey, you don't need to spend the extra money on the OEM Mercruiser drive. The SEI is just fine, but they're cheaper. The gears are smaller. It's not as durable of a drive. With that said, here's why I have it on the list, is because somebody that's going to replace their drive with the cheaper version aftermarket SEI, especially right before they're selling the boat, is doing it to cut costs. And the person installing it, they probably found the cheapest person. And it's just indicative of they didn't take care of it enough that they ruined their drive in some form or fashion. Now they're replacing it with the cheaper aftermarket. And if they're selling it soon after, well, they probably picked the cheapest, least expensive technician to do that, which means that maybe it wasn't done perfectly. It's the combination of all those things that make me put this on the list and say, I would walk away from this one. I would be really, really slow to make the investment in a boat that has this SEI aftermarket drive on it. Next is a saltwater stern drive. Virtually any saltwater stern drive that doesn't have a closed cooling system, like the new Volvos do, like the Mercury's or Seacore with the closed cooling option. Volvo was 2018, I think, is when they made the closed cooling standard. Seacore has been around, but not all saltwater stern drive boats have the Seacore. What happens is, what's on this image right here is those manifolds will, the way it cools is it sucks in the salt water to cool everything. That can start rusting out from the inside out. So you can't even see it. You can't inspect it unless you take it all apart. So I'm going to say, if you're looking at a stern drive and it's coming from saltwater, probably pass on that boat. If you're putting a stern drive in saltwater, you may want to consider going with the closed cooling system, the newer Volvos, or the Mercury with the Seacore option, where it's got a radiator type system, more like your car, and it's just using the raw water from your source to pull in and cool that fluid, but it's not getting the water up into the system as much. Or consider an outboard. I got a great video on stern drives versus outboards, especially on saltwater. I lean heavily towards the outboards or a true inboard. Next is the Volvo XDP drive. This is a composite drive that was going to revolutionize the stern drive market back in the mid-2000s, late 2000s. Well, this composite drive was nothing but headaches. Volvo didn't stand behind it. They kind of left everybody out to dry. There's class action lawsuits. Stay away from this drive. This is one that you run from. There's another boat out there that has a regular Volvo drive, a Mercury drive, that is not going to be problematic. It's a very expensive repair because you have to replace the whole drive. But stay away from the XDP composite drive. And then 7 Marine outboards. So 7 Marine, they were the darling of the dance for a long time. They came out with these high horsepower engines, 627 horsepower, 777 horsepower, 7 Marine. Everybody was talking about it. Well, Volvo bought them. Mercury came out with their 600. Volvo said, you know what? We're going to shutter 7 Marine. Good thing there's not many of them out there. They didn't make many. They're mainly going to be on the big offshore boats, center consoles with the trips and quads, but they were only in business for a short period of time. And then you've got an outboard with no title. Outboards are going to be registered as a separate unit on a boat, and they need to have their own documentation, their own serial number, and in many states they'll have their own title. So make sure you're cautious to have the boat, the motor. If it's an outboard, stern drives and inboards are attached to the boat, so they don't have their own ownership documentation, but outboards do. Every outboard, if you have a quad outboard, it's going to have 4 outboard titles and a boat title and potentially a trailer title. Check with your state. Figure out, this is one I would say walk. Figure out what your state's requirements are, how you can handle it, if a bill of sale is going to work, but that can be very problematic for people as well. If you're looking to buy a boat, grab the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit. It's totally free. You get that, the boat ownership calculator, so you can figure out the true cost of ownership in your area for the type of boats you're looking at. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button for me if you would. And remember, life truly is better on a boat.